I mean, again, we're not going to talk about that case. So you can tell whatever story about that case that you want to, but it's not going to be a story that we're going to be able to speak to.
Tonight, part 2 of my investigation into the Tulsa boys' home in DHS. Last night, we discussed the death of 14-year-old Cameron Dale and 13-year-old Rylan Harris. Both died after running off from the Tulsa boys' home 9 months apart last year.
Rylan was placed with the Tulsa boys' home through DHS. The lawyer representing Rylan's family says that was a mistake. Now his family is preparing to sue.
That attorney, Cameron Spradling, argues that Rylan was medicated and in and out of psychiatric medical facilities his entire life. He tells me Rylan was suicidal and homicidal at the time that he was placed with the Tulsa boys' home.
In this litigation, we're going to get down to caseworkers, and we're going to get down to people who are knowledgeable about it and people who had hands-on, and we're going to find out every step of the way of why Rylan Harris was in there.
Cameron Spradling is representing the family of Rylan Harris. He tells me 13-year-old Rylan was placed into DHS custody after trying to kill his mother in March 2019. He was originally placed at Integris Medical Center and moved by DHS to the Tulsa boys' home. Rylan arrived at the Tulsa boys' home about 7 months after 14-year-old Cameron Dale ran away from the facility and was hit and killed by a vehicle on Highway 51. Dr. Deborah Shropshire, Director of Child Welfare Services with DHS.
But honestly, our primary response to those kinds of situations is really first to say, how are the boys, how are the staff, what kind of support do you need? And then in addition to look at the system and ensure that the system is tight and safe.
DHS has no right to refuse contract with the Tulsa boys' home, meaning on any given day, the state can place 40 boys in the care of the executive director, Greg Conway, and the Tulsa boys' home. When you looked at the system at that time in March when that happened with Cameron Dale, was there anything that you found as far as policies or procedures or anything that wasn't followed or that made you pause for concern that it could happen again?
So that would not be information that we would share, at least that I would share in this kind of a setting. Let's make sure that I'm staying in the space we're supposed to be in.
Off of what you had said, though, that listen, we step in a situation like that and make sure that safety is a priority. Because we never want a Cameron Dale to happen again.
Correct, that's correct.
And unfortunately it did 8 months later with Rylan Harris. With no clear answer from DHS, we turn to Greg Conway, the executive director of the Tulsa boys' home for 24 years. Aside from a huddle, was there anything tangible that was done after Cameron Dale died to ensure that that wouldn't happen again?
Not really, because when we debriefed and assessed our protocols, we already are doing everything that can be done.
Spradling is unsatisfied with that response, saying Rylan would be alive today had something, anything, been done to ensure another child wasn't able to run off from the Tulsa boys' home after Cameron died. Moreover, he feels like Greg Conway should be able to return a child like Rylan to DHS after he ran away more than 20 times. Did you have any conversations in those early phases with DHS saying, listen, man, we just don't know about a Rylan?
Probably we did.
Greg, that's a yes or a no. Do you?
Well, I don't have the records in front of me, Brian, and I don't have it all memorized. But yeah, when a boy starts going AWOL, we will typically reach out to DHS and say, I'm not sure that this kid is a good fit.
Let's look at Mr. Conway. His promise to DHS, to adoptive parents, to foster parents, to the judge, to the guardian ad litem, to the attorneys, is I will keep these kids safe. And now you're telling me he can't do it? His hands are tied? He's incapable of doing it? I find that inexcusable.
Do you recall any conversations at all with DHS about feeling pressured at all to keep Rylan?
Not at all, none.
Do you believe that Rylan Harris ever should have been placed at the Tulsa boys' home?
I'm not going to talk about Rylan Harris's case. That's not a case that we would get into the details specifically of, because it's confidential information. We turned our attention to the number of runaways here at the Tulsa boys' home. Conway tells me 90% of his runaway reports come from children placed through DHS. These are just from the sheriff's office, and I'm curious as to your reaction to those numbers. Yeah, I mean, those are numbers. What would you like to talk about with them? Are you concerned at all that last year that the sheriff's office was called more than 200 times at the Tulsa boys' home? You have 40 beds that are there through DHS placement.
I mean, are those numbers concerning to you at all?
So anytime we have a single child or youth who is not where we want them to be, not where we are comfortable that they are safe, whether that's in a family setting, a group home setting, whatever that setting is, anytime a single child is missing from care, we are absolutely concerned.
So the big question remains here tonight. After Cameron and Rylan died, what, if anything, has been done to make sure that another tragedy doesn't happen at the Tulsa Boys Home? Tomorrow night, part 3, the tough questions continue. A statewide child advocacy group will weigh in on the challenges that facilities like the Tulsa Boys Home face and what DHS can do to help moving forward. We'll have that side of the story here tomorrow night right here at 9, and you can watch part 1 of this investigative series by clicking on newson6.com.